to today's tutorial. Today we're just going to be building a very simple color flipper application. Now this tutorial is geared towards the absolute beginner, because I'm just going to be building a basic user's interface right from scratch. So we will be using HTML, CSS and vanilla JavaScript in this tutorial. So I just want to build it from scratch for the sake of the beginners who will be watching this tutorial. So the interface is just going to be very simple. So I have an empty folder here called color flipper, and I have that folder set up in my Visual Studio Code. And what I want to do now is just to create the files we'll be needing for this application. So the first file is going to be the index file, the index.html file. I also want to have a style sheet, so I'll call this styles.css. And the last file we'll be having is the JavaScript file, so let's call this app.js. Okay, so I'll be setting up a simple boilerplate in the index file. So to set up a boilerplate to start with, we'll be using our MS abbreviation. So you hold down your shift key and the number 1 on the keyboard, and you can select this, the MS abbreviation, to bring out the boilerplate just like this, rather than typing it all from the very beginning. So my title is going to be, let's call this color flipper. Okay, and my body tag, I just want to have a simple div element with a class of container, and in this I just want to have a h1, the name of the application, color flipper. Okay, in this I want to have 3 buttons, so I'll have a class of a div of a class of button container, btn container. So I'll be setting up 4 buttons. We'll be needing 4 buttons, because we'll be using the RGB button selector, color selector rather. So the first button is going to be a red button. So copy this and paste it in a couple of times, 3 more times. Okay, and does it. So the second button will be a green button, the third button will be a blue button, and the last button is going to be this random button, random selector button. Okay, so I'll be giving all of these buttons a unique ID. First one is going to be, I'll call this red-btn, and for our green button I want to give it an ID of green-btn, and for the blue button I'll be giving an ID of blue-btn, and for our last button, this will have an ID of, okay, all guessed, random-btn. Okay, so I also want to give each of the button specific class, which will be pointing in our JavaScript file. So the first class I would like to give is a generic class for all of the buttons. So this will be btn. So all of the buttons need to have this generic class, and also I want to give it a unique class of red, since this is my red button. And for my green button, giving it that generic class of btn and green, and for my blue button I have a class of btn and blue. Lastly, for the random button we have a class of btn also, btn and random. Okay, and we'll be linking our files. Let's not forget that. I'm linking my style sheets, styles css, and also my JavaScript file. So we're heading down below the page. Before our closing body tag, we'll be having our script file linked up right here this way. So our source is going to be app.js. Okay, alright, that looks good. So for this tutorial I'll be using live server, so we don't have to reload every time we try to see what we are building. Okay, alright, this is what we have right now. Doesn't really look good, so we'll be setting up our HTML code, rather our CSS code in our CSS file. So the first thing I want to do is style the container. Remember, we have a class of container where all of this is embedded in. So I'll be styling that first, not in our style sheet, not in our JavaScript file. So for the container, our container is a class. So for classes, we always have a period sign before our selector. So our selector is the container, since it's a class. And what I want to do here is give our container a weight of 100, rather 50% of the body, and also give it a margin set to auto. Okay, and we'll give it text align center. Alright, so we want our border to be solid, and I want the green yellow border 10 pixels. Okay, that looks to be less, kind of reduce to 5 pixels. Okay, that looks good. Alright, I want to also give it a background color of let's go with this. Okay, alright, good. So I like to style the button tags. I'm styling the button tags. Now for my button tags, I want a width of 100 pixels, height of 50 pixels, margin of 10 pixels on both sides. Okay, and I want our cursor to be pointer. Alright, I also want the corners to be rounded a bit, so I will be using my border radius, and I'll give this here 10 pixels. Okay, that looks good. Looks good. Button is a bit rounded on all sides. Okay, what else do I want to do here? Okay, let me just make the text a little bit bolder. So I'll be font weight bold. Okay, good. Alright, in our index file, remember we gave each of our button a unique ID. So I want to style our button using these IDs. So for the first button, we had an ID of red-btn. So when styling our ID, we begin with a pound sign before the selector. And the selector here is red. I'm trying to style the red button, so red-btn. What I just want to style here is the background color of the button, so say background color to be red, so to be red. Okay, that looks good. So I'll do this for all of the two other buttons. So I'm going to copy this and just paste it below. So for the green button, I want it to have a background color of green also. And for the blue button, we want a background of blue. Okay, alright, that looks good. For the random button, we could just leave it this way because we'll be generating different colors using this random button right here. So I think the interface looks good. I'd like to bring the div, the container down a bit. So let's put that here. In the container, I want margin top to be, let's give this 5 pixels. Okay. 20 pixels. Okay, alright. Okay, that's just the basic user's interface. So I just did this to make it look a bit good. Just basic user's interface development. Now the main essence of this tutorial is JavaScript. Alright, so we would like to generate a red color whenever this button is clicked, a green color whenever this button is clicked, a blue color when this button is clicked, and lastly we will generate random colors on the fly using the RGB syntax. Remember our RGB syntax. Remember to fill in colors with the RGB. We have, for our red color, we will have values from 0 through to 255, and for our green color we will also have values from 0 through to 255, and lastly for our blue color we will have values to be selected from 0 through to 255. And if we recall, to generate, say to generate a black color, our values will be, our red is going to be 0, our green is going to have a value of 0, and our blue is going to have a value of 0. Now this RGB syntax here is going to generate a black color for us. But when we have a value of 255, which is the last value, and also for the green we also have 255, and for the blue we have 255, we will be generating a white color. Okay, alright, that's just by the way. So what we want to do here right now, what I want to do is to select all of the buttons using their unique IDs also. So I'm going to show you the very first way which we can generate colors when we click on each of these buttons. I'm just going to show you the very basic first way, and for the second method I'll be using a kind of array or a higher order method to generate colors using these buttons. So what I want to do first is to select our buttons using our ID. So for the very first button, which is the red button, I'll call it, I'll name my variable red document dot gets element by ID. We're selecting it using their various ID. So for the red button, we had an ID of red-btn. So that'll be red-btn. So I'm going to be doing this for all of the buttons. So I'll just copy this and paste it 3 more times. So for this button, I have a variable name of green. And the ID green dash btn. For this we have blue dash btn, and our variable is going to be blue. Oh, let's make this easy to understand. So I'll call this red btn, call this green btn, call this blue btn, and I'll call this random btn. So this is going to be random btn. Okay. Alright, let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay. We have all of our buttons selected. So what do we want to do? We have to add event listeners to each of the button. So for the first button, my red btn, I'll be adding an event listener. What event are we listening to? We're listening to the click event. And this also takes in a callback function. And when this button is clicked, what do we want to generate? We want to generate a red color on the background. So for the document, to do that, we need to call in the document, then the body, which is what we want to style, and we have a property of style added to the body object. And what property of the styling do we need? We need the background color. Okay, so we want to style this to red. Okay, so let's see if that works. Alright, so we've generated a red color. We're going to do this for the green button also. So copy this and paste it in 2 more times. Now for the green button, I want this to be green. And then for the blue button, excuse me, for the blue button, I want to change the background color to be blue also. Alright, so if I click this, when generating red color, click this green, click this blue. Alright, now to write in the functionality for our random button here, we would also have to add an event listener to our random button. So what event are we listening to? We're also listening to the click event, and this also takes in a callback function. So now we're trying to generate random colors. So what do you think we're going to do? We're generating random colors. Remember I told you we'll be generating random colors using our RGB syntax. Okay, random colors between 0 through to 255 for each 0 through to 255, and for the blue color we're generating values randomly from 0 through to 255. So right here I would like to I'd like to call in a variable for our random color for red. So we need to generate a random value for red, generate a random value for green, and also generate a random value for blue. So I'm going to create a variable here for the very first random value I want to generate for red. So I'll call this red. So remember, when we try to generate random values, we use our JavaScript inbuilt function rather, called the math.random function. Now we're going to multiply this by because when we are calling in this function, we're actually starting from the very first number here, which is 0, through to the last number. So we're multiplying this by 255. Okay, but this is going to actually give us a decimal, so this will be generating numbers, float numbers. So we don't want that. What we want is actually whole numbers. So what do? We have another function called mathflow, which does that for us to generate whole numbers. So we're going to embed our random function in this, so we can generate whole numbers, integers. Okay, alright, I hope that makes sense. We're also going to do that for our green color. So I'm declaring a variable also called green, math.flow. In here I want to generate a random number, math.random, and multiply by 255. Also for my green color, I'll create a variable for that. Rather my blue, creating a variable and generating a random number from it. Okay, so we're multiplying this by 255. And now we have our red color. That is our red color, random color generated, green and blue all generated. So we need to pull all of these variables into this syntax and assign it to our style to generate a random background color for us. So we're going to style that we've been doing, calling in our body. So we're going to style our body. What do we want to style? We are styling the background color. So we're styling the background color this is the syntax we would want to use to generate that random color. So I'm going to embed this syntax in a template literal. So I'll be using my backticks, RGB. Now for the first color, which is the red color, I'm calling in this variable. So in our template string, to call in variables, we use this syntax here. So I'm calling in my red variable. So whatever random number that has been generated from here will be embedded here. Also, I want to do the same thing for my green color. Goes in green. And lastly, I want to do the same for my blue. So this will be blue. Okay. Alright. Can get rid of this. Okay. So let's see if that works. Alright. We're generating random colors on the fly. And that looks good. So pretty simple, isn't it? Alright, for the second method on how to do this, we'll be using higher order array method to generate, to make all of this button clickable and generate random colors. So what I'm going to do right now is to comment this out. I'm going to leave it for your reference in the code so that you can have it. Now in our index file, we had generic class of btn, so that is what we'll be targeting in our JavaScript file now to use on our higher order array method, which to be specific is going to be the for each method. So we're going to be pointing at this generic class button, generic class name, which is btn, and also we'll be pulling in this our other classes, which is red, green and blue in our JavaScript file. So to do that, I'm going to first pull in our generic class name, which is btn. So I'll call this variable buttons. So document not get element, because it's actually a class. It's a class, not an ID. So we are not using the property get element, the property get element by ID. Rather, we'll be using query selector. And since we're selecting just more than one button, I'm going to be using query selector all. So all of the button has a generic class of btn. So that's why I'm selecting btn. Okay, good. So what do I want to do here for all of the button? I'm using my higher order array method, which is for each. Now for each takes in a callback function. And this callback function also takes in a parameter. Now this parameter, I'm going to call it btn. Now for each button in the HTML collection, which is this, all of this button, seen as the HTML collection. Now for each of the button, I'd like to add an event listener for each of the button. Our event, while listening to the click event, and as we know, this also takes in a callback function. Now we would like to know which of the button was actually clicked. Okay, now for us to do that, if we go back to our index.html file, if you notice in our class attribute here, we have two classes, btn and red for the red button. We also have two classes here for the green button, btn and green, And also for this button we have two classes, which is btn and blue. Now we want to look through each of the button to know which of the button was actually clicked. So this is where our class of red, green and blue comes in. So what I'm going to do here is I'll be setting up an if statement. So if the button that is clicked contains a class list, contains a class of red. Okay, now we want to style, let me just copy this. Okay, I have this. Just copy this. We want this to be styled red. I want the background color to be styled red. Okay, now this I'll go back through the code again. Now if the button that is being clicked contains a class of red from the class list, if it contains a class of red, then the background color should be styled with a red background. So that's what this syntax here means, this code here means. So if I click on this button, we are generating a red color. So we'll be doing that for every of the button, or we'll be having a couple of else if in this code. Now else if the button class list contains green class, then we want to style our body to be green. Else if our button class list contains the class of blue, then we would like to style our background color to be blue. Okay, now else if for the last button, the button class list contains random, then we'll do the same thing here. We'll declare our variable. Oh, I'll just copy this because it's the same thing we're going to be doing here, and paste it right in here. Okay. Okay, I think this is it. So if we click on this, we're generating red. Click on this, green, blue, and for the random, we're also generating random colors. Okay, alright, so that's the code. It all looks good. So whichever one seems convenient for you, you can use, but this is just the higher order array method that is being used here, and this is just a normal procedure which we can use in building our application here. So you can feel free to edit the application and see what you can do to make it look better than this. Alright, that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching, and do have a great day out there.